Welcome to this video in which I'm going to do a live edit of this photograph. I haven't edited this before. It's the lovely Mishka Scott. It was from a studio shoot a few weeks ago before the lockdown. I'm going to show the sort of simple way that I will approach editing portraits using mostly Lightroom. Maybe do something at the end in Photoshop or even go into the area of layers. I'm not a big Photoshop user. I don't do a lot of model photography, and I also like to keep things simple. So I have my way of doing things that works for me, that produces a result that works for me. You know, it may not be an award-winning image at the end of this, but I think it'll be a better picture than what we've got. We're starting with great raw material. Mishka's a supermodel. And incredible hair. This was shot in studio with a number of lights, an overhead light with a red gel, a large softbox to the model's right, and a reflector to the model's left, large reflector. That was the basic lighting setup. So the first thing I'll do with this, we're gonna work on the face. It's a portrait, and we're gonna work on the face. And the first thing I will do is I'll have a think about my overall exposure here. Now, I could increase the shadows. I don't find the shadow controller works as well as it used to in the newest version of Lightroom. So I'm inclined to use exposure, and I'm going to bring the exposure up very, very slightly, and I'm going to take the highlights down just to soften that shine on the skin a little bit. So just a little bit of a change in overall exposure. I'm not worried about the rest of the image. My main concern at the moment is the face. We're going to deal with that. So I've got a base exposure that I like, and we can always come back to that later. That's the joy of this. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the eyes. I always like to sort of get the eyes done first. So go up to the brush tool, and I'm going to work with exposure at 1/3 of a stop. It's already set, and I am going to brighten the eyes and just brightening the white and the iris of the eye, and I'm going to do them both equally. Sometimes I will do the eyes separately if there is a bit of an imbalance. That might actually even be a little bit bright, so I'm going to just bring that just down a little bit. I just want the eyes to pop a little bit. Now the other thing that I want to do is there's a bit of a difference between the iris of the eyes. This eye is a bit darker. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to a new brush, and I am going to select the iris enhance. Now that gives me a bump in exposure, gives me a little clarity, which can darken again, and some saturation. Not so much interested in the saturation. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw around this iris here. That's the only part of the eye I want to work with that. And as you can see, it has just brought that eye up a little bit more like the other eye. And if I wanted to, I could just click new, and I'll get that again. I'm going to leave the exposure and maybe just give the rest of the boost to the other iris as well, just to sort of balance them up a bit. And again, off and on. Yeah, I'm going to leave that as at that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the skin. Now, the thing with, I work with Sony lenses. They've got eye autofocus, which was absolutely bang on in that eye. We were working at f4 for this one, so we've got a little bit of fade off on the more distant eye. That's okay, it's fine. But we've got the eye closest to the camera in really sharp focus. But what we want to do is just gently soften the skin, and I actually find the new so click a new brush, the texture tool I believe was developed as a skin softening tool. Now I'm going to bring this down to about -60 or so, and I'm going to take a slightly larger brush, and I'm going to brush on to the skin and take away some of the detail in the skin with that. And it doesn't matter if I go over these strands of hair and stuff. And I'm going to go pretty comprehensively round the face, and I'm just going to brush in that softening right around on the face. Now I can scroll with my mouse and reduce the side of the brush. I've got a slight feather on it, which I just like to keep. It keeps things, easy. And if I ever want to see have I missed any bits, I can go down here and click on Show Selected Mask Overlay, and I can make sure that I haven't missed anything. We're going to come up here. You want to be as precise as you sort of can, but it's not absolutely crucial with this. Keeping away from the lips, as you see, and keeping away from the eyes, but I am going to go in over the eyelid here, and I'm not worried about these little hairs that I'm catching. This is a softer focus here, it's maybe not so important, but I'm just going to go in there and go close to the eyebrow, but not over the eyebrow. Okay, so let's see, we have quite nicely softened the skin there. Now, as I say, my approach is to keep it simple, and I know there's 101 ways that you can soften skin, and you can go into Photoshop and you can do frequency separation and all sorts of stuff. The aim of the key word in the title of this video is simple. So I'm going to bring this same softening down onto the neck here. Okay, so we've got that. But now we have bright hands. So what do I want to do with the hands? Well, I want to do three things, and I can probably do them together, but sometimes you may need to do them separately. So I'm going to go into a new brush, and I am going to stick with my skin softening tool, but I'm going to do a couple of other things here. I'm going to bring highlights down, and I am going to put a little smidge, 7 or 8 warmth into this, and we'll brush this on and we'll see what it looks like. Now you can see the warmth brushing onto the skin. We're darkening the highlights, but because of the added warmth, we're giving a little bit of colour and not just grey. So instead of having these big bright hands, I am subduing the highlights and softening the skin down, and I am adding that warmth, which is giving me a better overall look to the hands. Now I want to keep this quite natural, so I might just bring the hands down a tad more. I want them to be a little bit darker. I could even, I can play with the texture, put a wee bit more texture, but I think we'll keep the texture down. And you can even, if you want to, even soften some more by putting in a bit of negative clarity too on the hands, if you want to just keep the attention away from the hands, because we want the attention on the face. You can mess a bit too much if you start going too far. So let's go back and see where we are and see the difference. So I think that little bit of exposure, maybe we've taken it too far, because I want to balance it with the skin on our face. I'm not trying to subdue the hands. I want this more natural. So I think we leave that there. Okay, so there's where we've got to, and let's see. Let's go back to where we started, just to see. Okay, and that is where we are. So what else do I want to do? I'm not really gonna mess around with the jacket. Actually, what I got to do is maybe something with the hair. So again, I'm going to go back up to the brush tool, and I'm going to take texture, and this time I'm going to take texture up. Now I find texture easier to work with than clarity, but we could work with both, and I'm going to just brush on the hair there and on the hair here. I don't need to be too exact, and I'm going to bring shadows up, I think, because I want to bring some detail into the hair, but I don't want to bring too much. Might be worth adding some clarity if I'm doing that. A little bit of blacks, and let's see how that's looking. So we've added just a little bit more detail in the hair, just to show up a little bit of detail there. Yeah. I think that's good. I think that's nice, because we've got the red. Now you notice I didn't go over the red. I think we've got enough. We've got enough detail in there. It was just the shadows here, and particularly in this area of the hair here, that want to make sure that we've got something there. So we're done there. So again, let's see. It's subtle, so I might add a little bit more to that. So let's pick that up again. So we pick up our active brush, and then maybe just bring those shadows up just a bit more. Okay. Okay. We're good. So what is left to do on this shot? Well, for me, the thing that I will add generally is a little bit of sharpening. So again, back to the brush tool, new tool, and we're going to go on sharpness. Now what I usually add with sharpness is a little bit of clarity, about 10. The sharpness is about 20. And a small brush, and I'm just going to sharpen the eyebrow, and I'm going to sharpen the eye, just a little bit of localized sharpening. Probably because there's fall off on this side, it's not so important, but we'll give that eye a little bit of sharpening for balance. And then I'm going to hit new again, and then I'm going to do the lips. But what I will add into the lips in the mix is a little bit of saturation, maybe just to bring up the lipstick. So there we have that. Now the one thing I want to check is we can move between these points. I just wanted to see that I've got everything done and I haven't missed anything really on the face. The area there, just a brush in, and I think we've got most of that. And you can see that I'm just brushing in texture because I've highlighted that. So we're done there, and we're out. So there is what we've got, and there's where we started. So now the next step I will go to is to go into I'll go into Photoshop. Now I'm not a big Photoshop user, but so I might get it might be a bit of dithering when I get to it. So edit in, and we're going to do Photoshop 2020, and there we go, and there is our shot. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to do a little bit of touching, and I know you can do this on a layer. We can just add a, say I'm not terribly au fait with this, whereas create a new layer. So sample all layers, and we're going to do a little bit of spotting. So I've my wheel set that I can I can zoom with the wheel. So I'm going to just use the healing brush, and I'm going to just brush out a few wee skin blemishes. Now there's different ways to do it. That one, I think actually what I'll do is we'll use the different healing tool, and what we'll do is we'll sample, we'll do normal, small brush, a little bit of feather on it, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw from an adjacent area, which should give us a more natural result. And again, that little spot on the nose, that little thing there, that little thing there, this little spot here, and you notice I'm picking up at each stage. I'm picking up something nearby, but I can move where I get my source from, and just a few wee things just to pick up to use your pickup point, Alt key, and then you can choose where you want your source to be, and it will move with the tool. So you can sort of use that. So you can see where we're picking up from. So just a few wee odd bits to play with. Let's just make sure there isn't anything particular in our hands. The rest of the forehead, there's a wee area there. I'm just gonna play with there. So the other thing then is these little stray hairs. So we can do the similar thing here. Just pick up area adjacent to that and come round and take these hairs out. And that one there I picked up. I'm picking up. This is the problem with this tool. You can end up picking up areas that you don't want to. So you've got to be really careful where that little cross is going. So just picking up a few of these hairs just to take them, just to minimize the impact of these. I don't think it's not a big worry for me with this shot. I don't want to end up making a mess of things or spending hours doing this really on this shot. So, I mean, I could spend ages working on these, and this is all just a matter of how much of a perfectionist you want to be. So just removing a few of these more prominent hairs, but just to get them out of the way. Maybe let's see if we can move that one. You can always go back if you don't like the effect it's having. That one there is a bit problematic. Not bad. Let's see, maybe we tackle these a wee bit. That's really going to be a tricky one. Let's see what we can do. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Let's go back on that one. It's left a bit of a black smudge, hasn't it? Don't like that. So I'm going back in the history. Let's try from this side. I'll get rid of that one there. Again, take it from there, so we're well out of the way. Get rid of that. rid of that. And then now I've got a black smudge again. Don't want that. Down here, get rid of that. Okay, we're doing pretty well there, I think. Okay. I mean, the thing is, if I zoom out, you're really not gonna see that. We can always smooth that a little bit later back again in Photoshop. So let's see what we've done. So very minor change, but it's just helped slightly. Okay, so now the next bit is where it sort of gets complicated. So I'm going to pause this for a moment, and then we'll come back when I get a couple of other things organized. Now I've opened another image, which is a texture from another program I have. So I've opened that in a separate window. So what I'm going to do is I am going to tile these two. So what I need to do with this is actually rotate. So we're going to go on this, and we're going to go to image rotation, and we're going to, actually I had already flipped that, so I probably could do it, undo rotate canvas. There we go. So I've got this, and what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it onto my photo of Mishka, and it says it has a different blah blah blah. May result in lower than okay. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes, I do. So I can now close that, and now I've got this ugly texture in front of the lovely Mishka. So what I'm going to do with this is I am going to position this, and I'm going to drag it to cover the whole image and pop it there. I'm sure there are other ways to do this that, you know, you clever people who use Photoshop a lot will be able to say, why are you doing that for? I'm doing that because that's all I know. Right, so we've covered up Mishka with that. So what do I want to do? Well, what I want to do is I want to change the overlay or the type of blend mode that we've got here. So I am going to go down to one of these linear light, and let me see, hard lights, soft light we're going to use. And you might say, oh, there we go, that's it, all done. But the thing is that in fact the mask is also affecting Mishka's skin. So I don't really want that. What I want is mostly on the background, but I want to sort of remove it from the rest of the image. It has also, as you can see, it has also considerably darkened the image. It has had quite a nice effect, but you could leave it like that. But what we'll do here is we'll get a mask, and then brush this out. So we'll take our tool here, we will set our brush to black, and let's start brushing out on our lovely model to reveal the image below. And because of the texture of her jacket, you know, you don't have to be too clever about the edges. you know, which is a great thing, and it means I'm not really working with a selection. I'm not having to make a selection around her her hair, you know. And if I go a wee bit too far, I just change that, and I can, you know, make sure I've not got a halo in the texture, little bits that might not look so good. So now we have got that. And, you know, a man on a galloping horse wouldn't see the joins, to be honest. Just have a look at the now. So there we go. We have got now our model against a textured background rather than the plain background that we had before. Now, if I wanted to, of course, you know, you can play with the opacity of that and, you know, vary how much of that. That's what, about 60%, or take it right up. So you can work with that as you want. I'm going to leave it at 100%. I quite like it at 100%. So now there's a couple of things you can do. You can just sort of say, right, okay, I like that. We'll just flatten it, but probably just to save it as it is. So I'm going to save that with layers, and it's going to go back into Lightroom. So there we go, and there is our completed image in Lightroom. Now there's a few other things I could do if I wanted to. I'm a great believer in just having a bit of a play around with some things. This cool light preset I really like for some images. You know, yeah, the gritty images are maybe a wee bit too much, but you know, it depends on the style you're going for. You know, there's a lot of stuff in here that you can play with. There's some great black and white presets. So, you know, we're not necessarily finished with this image. Actually, I have to say I really like that that there. So what we've got here is this image. Well, what else would I want to do with this? This is sort of at the stage where maybe I will play around with a radial filter. I use that as a vignette, and you know, we can use that, put a bit of exposure, just draw on Mishka, and you know, and we can alter the shape of the vignette, or the, you know, how dark or bright we want that. You know, and in fact, you know the trick where if you right click, you can duplicate the layer, separate them very slightly, so you've got your two little control points. Okay, and what I could do with that one then is I could invert that one. I will take that little bit of darkness off, and I could actually add some warmth in the way that we had with the overlay, but without the texture. You know, you can play around with a few things here that maybe will enhance the image, and again you can check what's happening. So give that a little bit, so it's giving an overall tone to the image, which I think in this case actually is working quite nicely. I'm going to go back on the other control point, and I'm maybe going to reduce the feather a bit, and I will maybe actually just take shadows isn't doing much. I think we're just going to work with exposure and take the exposure down as a sort of a vignette. We can play with that a bit. So will we call that done? And if I want to play with black and white, the joy of virtual copies, and I really did like that. I think, you know, got some really nice possibilities here with a black and white from that, and it depends on the skin tones you want. One thing when you're playing with these presets is some of them use saturation to create the black and white, and some of them use a black and white profile. It's worth keeping an eye on what's happening here, because if it's saturation, then you'll not be able to work with the black and white tool. So you have to be very careful that the profile that you're using is the profile that you're going to use is do I want one with more contrast? Yeah, the profile that you're going to use actually uses the black and white, or the preset you're going to use uses a black and white profile, and then you can play with the black and white controls. If it uses saturation, you can't. So you know, those are the different ways of working with it, and it's all just a matter of taste. Dark hair, lighter hair, bit too contrasty. I'm liking the darker skin tone. So let me see what we've got here. You see, so I can take my selective tool and I can say, well, let's just boost the skin tone a little bit there. I'm not really sure. You can see what we're moving there. We're also getting a change because of the red in the hair, but you can bring that back down again, and we've got the skin tone. So there we go. We've got a very nice colour image and a rather nice black and white as well out of the one image. So that's me done. I hope you enjoyed that, and it'll maybe give you something to play with during our enforced social isolation. And good luck to you all. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.